Welcome. This is Thrive While Loving an Addict. Welcome to our podcast, everyone. I am so excited to bring to you today Cathie Coe Sipe. She's the founding director of New Each Morning, which is a nonprofit organization out of Bend, Oregon. She's dedicated to providing post-recovery support for women who have gone and graduated from alcohol and drug treatment programs. She brings a deep faith and a heart of service and has been working with women for over 40 years. She came through the salon world and does what she calls hairthy, which is hair therapy. And I just love the terminology. She also has her own experience with alcoholism. Her first husband passed away at 49 from alcohol-related issues. She's since remarried, and she is the mom of a collective brood of 8 adult children and 4 grandchildren. She is so dedicated and a life living of service. She brings empathy and experience, and we're so excited to have her with us today. So here we are with Cathie Coe Sipe, and again, I'm so excited to have her with us today. I can't wait to hear about hair therapy. And let's start with your journey, Cathie, being married to first husband dealing with alcohol issues and how that has informed and influenced you in the creation of this life that you've led and New Each Morning. So thanks
Great.
for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for this platform. Thank you for the opportunity and privilege to be here. I wish that I would have had it 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I was married. My first husband was an alcoholic. And, when you're young and you're both kind of just partying and living life, and then you start adulting. And he just continued on in his addiction. And I did the typical thing. If I just keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing, it'll be better. And I can fix this. I can do all that. If I just do what I'm supposed to do, but not in the healthy way, more of an enabling way. And so we had 3 kids, and I did what is typical. I was the bridge, and I just kept covering for it and covering for it. And finally, I did it to a point where I was just a shell. There was nothing left in me.
Yeah.
And it was just chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And it got to the point where he eventually moved out. And my children hated me for that because he was voicing his. But I knew that I knew in the very core of me, it would all come out in the wash.
Right.
And that it would be okay. And that's exactly what happened. I had to stop being the bridge between the kids and their father. And so then life got real in a different way. Being a single mom with 3 kids and having my own business with being a hairdresser I was over 40 years as a hairdresser. And that's where therapy came in.
So great.
That's what we call it in the salon, therapy, because basically you are the therapist and you do life with people and you build relationship, and those relationships meet up every 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever it is, but you pick up right where you left off. And so that's where the therapy came from.
Well, so let me just ask a quick question. Was therapy how you began to get yourself back also?
Well, actually, I got myself back at the point of realizing that I was no longer responsible for his addiction. And I actually did attend some Al-Anon meetings, and there I had a credible support system.
Right.
But there I got some education, and that helped me a lot. And so then I just started rebuilding from where we were and focusing on the kids and doing what we were doing life, but without the elephant in the room. And that's really hard because you have to watch your kids go through the heartache when that veil is pulled back and the reality is between the two of them. And that's hard as a mama.
Yeah.
To watch that.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the process. And so I just went on with life. And then he actually passed at we were divorced by this time, but he actually passed at the age of 49 due to alcoholism and just the deterioration of his esophagus and his internal system.
Right.
Super sad, super sad.
Yeah.
He was a great guy with a giant heart, but he just could not, he didn't want to. And one of the things I realized in listening to your podcast and all the different, I actually went on a binge with Voices and Courage. And I just have to tell you, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you beginning this. And it's a huge blessing and hope and truth. And I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. I love that you went on a binge.
I did. And I've just been sharing it because we all, whether it's family or friends, we are all affected by addiction in whatever form, whatever that looks like, but we're all affected. And so I have been able to share it, and just knowing that it's going to give, actually shared it with my daughter the other day and asked that she please start listening to them. So let's go back to the beginning of New Each Morning. So I realized that I wanted to get involved in my community, and nothing here really clicked. And so I learned about Dress for Success. And that's a global organization, actually. Right. And so I would drive to Portland, which is about 3 hours or so. And I would drive to Portland once a month, and I would do haircuts and another role called personal shopper, because women are referred there and they come in and they get their hair done, they get their makeup done, they get clothes. And what I realized a year later is that that was a piece of the puzzle for New Each Morning. So we had the snowpocalypse winter, and I'm like, why am I doing this in someone else's community? This is silly. So I went searching for somewhere to plug in and bend, and I started volunteering at a women's residential program. And so I would do haircuts there and then just work the desk and build relationships with the women. Yeah. And they would come in, and from just that broken place where they actually are ready for some help. And I would watch them, we'd build relationship with them. I'd watch them courageously work harder than majority of people, I think, in trying to undo and redo and rewrite their story. And this program is about a year long, and they would graduate. And then it was like, goodbye, have a nice life. You did it. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not right. We're dropping them off a cliff, like all the work that these programs put into the women. And then it's just, they're dropped off a cliff. And I'm like, something has to be done. And so that's where I realized, okay, somebody has to do something. and that somebody would be you. All fingers were pointing at me. That somebody was me. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. And it was like, well, here we go, girl. You're going to learn how to do it. Yeah. And so I spent a year actually creating the program. In that year's time, because I was still working behind the chair. And in that year's time, I realized that I couldn't do both with excellence. And so it was time to let my career and my identity in that way, let that go. And my current husband now, was 100% in support and has been in every way. So I was grateful for that. He kind of let me process through that transition. He's a fisherman. And so I'm like, the best example of this transition is that I feel like a fish on the bank because I'm so used to working in a very tight schedule that's, 6 months out. And so now I'm like, oh, first of all, who am I? Yeah. In this process. Sure. So I began working with for women that graduated from this particular program, because I wanted to know, what do the trenches look like? What am I going to be asking someone else to do? Because I want to know it. I want to know what the reality is in this, because we really were like a unicorn. At that time, there really wasn't post-recovery support. And I was reminded this morning when I was thinking about doing this podcast that in 2019, I held a meeting and I invited executive directors and representatives from the different treatment programs here locally and different parts of recovery community, whatever their part looked like. And they came to the table and they're like, yes, Can you
Wow.
please start this tomorrow?
Wow.
And I like, all right, that's what I needed to know, that this really was needed in our community. So we launched New Each Morning January of 2020, January 1st, 2020.
Oh, wow.
When I say that, everyone usually goes, ooh, because it's in our, the body doesn't forget.
For
The body
sure.
keeps score. And so that year was something that was unknown to all of us. But it was divine timing because, as we all know, isolation is not good for anyone. And so when you are coming out of recovery and you are walking in a new identity and you don't have the support system that you had before, and you don't really have the support system of the program, so to speak, you're out there. And so it was the perfect time.
What I know to be true is, certainly in the business world, is that 95% of our success or failure is directly determined by our community and who we surround ourselves with. And so, the notion that somebody would complete a year-long program and then you're on your own, that just does not compute. And so I love that you followed basically a calling that you had no idea, really, to some extent, what you were stepping into. And for those of us who are listening that know how kind of running a business is, to go from what you described as, 6 months of appointments made and all the things, and what that life is, and then to go to a life that you're going to create and you're going to build basically out of not much, and you're going to figure it out along the way. That is a courageous leap.
Thank you. It was courageous, but it's so parallel to the women that we're working with. So parallel, because I remember, I didn't even know what a Google Doc was. Okay. Those are not relevant in
the salon world.
Salon.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Right. And so I remember this moment, and I just, those moments where you just go, I don't know how to do this. And I remember hearing the voice, I want you to pin this moment. You pin exactly what you're feeling right now. You remember it because it's pivotal in what I'm calling you to do, because that is exactly what your clients are going to feel like. That's exactly it.
Oh, that's so great.
And that has just, that has stayed with me. And New Each Morning is built on relationship, connection, and trust. And those are the three things. And that's what I needed in the community that I had in order to create this and to walk it out. But I had all those years of experience in knowing the truth of that.
I love how you see your journey into the unknown as the same journey that your clients are taking. Because it is, most people that are the loved ones, like myself with Sam, I didn't know what I didn't know about that. And so it was kind of a slow reveal to me, to some extent, to understand that I was as much in the unknown as he was as much in the unknown. And we both had these kind of like parallel paths, journeys that we were walking, but at the same time inextricably linked, in ways that it's hard to describe to people who haven't, been through that.
Exactly. And that is so, we don't know what we don't know. And I was listening to a book the other day. It's called In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, Mark Batterson. And he said he gave his definition of success. And that was doing the best you can with what you have in the situation. And I thought, wow, that's exactly how we at New Each Morning measure success. It's one victory at a time, one moment at a time, a day at a time. And that, that circles back to, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And doing the best. And one of the things in my binging on Voices and Courage was something that you said, that the day that Sam was arrested and you were there on the sidewalk and you brought the love. And as we talked before, not we don't even realize at the moment what we're bringing or what we're doing without even knowing it. But you brought love to the scenario, to him, to the whole picture. You were the love on the sidewalk. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think all of us that are in this work metaphorically, we are the love on the sidewalk.
Yes.
In a space where a lot of people's families or friends have walked away from them or dismissed them. They're looking at the behavior instead of the trauma that underlies the behavior. They're not seeing the spirit of the person that has been hijacked by the behavior. And so what I'd love for you to do is to speak to one woman that stands out for you as a story that's kind of emblematic of why you do this work.
Yes. So right away, the first one, I started working with her early on. She was actually one of them that had her youngest. She has 4 children. Her youngest is now about to turn 9. But I walked with her. We walked with her through everything, job search, preparing for a job. She actually, in having her son actually became her job, kicked out of multiple daycares, multiple preschools before the age of 5. Just a challenge. And she, with the support around her, took on the challenge to fight for him while we were all supporting her. So we have walked with her. She's actually on our website. So if you go onto our website, you'll see Misty's testimony about New Each Morning. But I just recently had a visit with her, and she had a relapse. About a year ago, she had a relapse. But she shared with me just the other day, she was able to walk through her shame in wanting to hide from her community, her need to go back into a treatment program. But because she knew the love, the pure, unconditional love of the community around her, New Each Morning being a part of that, she said, I knew that I could do it.
Awesome.
I knew that I could do it. And we are just waiting for her. She's like, it's coming, Cathie. I know that I will be a part. And when she is a part and one of our connection advocates, and she will be much more in the tapestry of New Each Morning for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Her
I
son
think
I just want to give a report on her son.
Yeah.
There's actually this genius in there. And because of her commitment and perseverance, the layers are beginning to be removed. And the school, people at the school, the teachers are seeing that and on board because she was such an advocate for him and having the support around her. And she now, with the support and with persevering and the courage that it took, there's been expungement on her record, and she's now able to volunteer at his school and go into the school as a proud mama. And just when we get these reports, I'm telling you, it just makes all the hard worth it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's why I wanted you to tell the story.
Yeah, I just encourage everyone to go onto our website at neweachmorning.org and watch a couple of testimonies that we have on there.
Yeah, it takes a village for lives to transform. And what I'm struck with is the notion that you're going to go to treatment once pretty much is a fabrication. The average is 5 to 6 times before treatment begins to really take hold. And so it just becomes how I looked at it with Sam was, okay, every time he went, he gathered some bits of information. He gathered more bits of information. But how I think about when a relapse occurs is it's almost like you get swallowed by shame again.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the courage that it takes to step out of the shadows and the grip of shame is, I think, at a magnitude that most people don't understand.
I agree 100%, 100%. In visiting with our clients and just, working through these things, shame is like this horrible blanket, this horrible covering that just keeps gnawing
Mm-hmm.
not just gnawing. And I mean, everybody has it,
Mm-hmm.
but the degree when you come to an awareness of the fact that you've lost your children, you've lost your career, you've lost family, you've lost friends, and the reality that you cannot go back to that support system,
Mm-hmm.
quote, support system that you
Mm-hmm.
had.
Right.
When you're clean and sober and you're aware, that's a very scary place. It's a big open space where
Mm-hmm.
shame can just come in and fill that. And that's where we, in meeting with our clients every week and having that open communication
Mm-hmm.
and being able to speak to that. And I am a person that we all need to be in therapy.
I totally agree.
I'm a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to describe it as this railroad, this train, and you would just kind of veer off 1 degree at a time, and then you'd get to the counseling, and then you'd be back on track. And so I kind of see that with meeting with our clients. They know they can call, they can text, they know that we're here, and that's an open door so that when that voice comes, we get to partner together and say, no, nope, you don't have a voice here.
Yeah.
You got to go.
And kind of how I think about it, Cathie, is, we're just habit making machines. So we have these habits of thought, habits of emotion, habits of behavior. And when you have been in addiction mode, you have addiction habits of thought, addiction habits of emotions, and addiction habits of behavior. And breaking those habits and recreating anew, again, I think is just a leap way beyond what most people think of, that it really is, because you have to rewire your brain in order to think different thoughts and then therefore have different emotions and therefore have different behavior. And I love what you said in terms of, you get clean and sober. Like my son's been now 19 months. And when he hit his like 15th month, I began to realize that this is the longest period of time that he had been clean and sober in his entire adult life. And so he had a sister pass away about that time. And I thought, well, this is going to challenge him in his sobriety and his recovery. And we talked quite a bit about that. And he had a very solid practice that he was doing, and he had a community, and they helped shepherd him through this massive challenge of losing her. And so, gosh, there's just so much to this.
Yes, yes, but how beautiful to hear about the community that was around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said too, which is something that we all need to implement in life itself, is getting a plan
Mm-hmm.
before
Mm-hmm.
life happens. When you're out of the drama and trauma and all of that, getting a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so beautiful that you worked a plan with him. So that is what can trigger. We can implement that plan, whatever it is. I mean, that's such great advice for everyone for life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I coach and train execs on emotional fitness. And it's not like you take a course and you're then emotionally fit. It is a daily practice. And certainly during the times when it got really, what I would say, the game up leveled with Sam in terms of, when he was using fentanyl. And I up leveled my plan to take care of myself. And when things get sideways with all the people that I work with and so on and so forth, I up level. I'm all like, okay, I got to up level my game because I want to stay in the thriving space from an intentional place. And so to think that we're going to do the work and then we're going to be all good is
Nope.
It's not how life works.
It isn't.
Mm-mm.
It isn't. And I love a term that you use, skill up. So for life, there's always more tools to learn. We're always called, to show up and to bring those tools. And so getting those tools helps. I mean, that's the key in skilling up. And so I love, in yoga, I love the terminology that we yoga practice.
Mm-hmm.
And medicine is practiced.
Right.
And, being a woman of faith, it's practiced. And so we need to operate, I believe we need to operate in a practice. We are practicing
Right.
how to show up and to show up. And there's opportunity to learn in every scenario and take what we've learned and go on. And that's basically working with our women, our ladies, learning new skills and learning positive ways to respond rather than fall back into the reaction.
Right.
The reaction wheel. And
So
that brings so much life.
Absolutely. And what I'm wondering is, what was the journey for you in working with women that, because I think holding space and loving people deeply is absolutely the most courageous act. And so the work that you're doing is that. And I'm imagining there are times when things happen and it knocks you on your butt. And so what are at least 3 tools that you use that are like non-negotiable in you being able to stay steady in the work that you do?
Yes. So the first one is pause. Okay, let's just stop this train right here and let's get into a space. For me, being a person of faith, I just have to get in that space and be still and ask, what is the truth that I know? What is the truth here in this situation? Or what is the truth that I know? And how do I apply that truth to this scenario? And giving space, stopping the train and creating that space. Because when those wheels are turning and it's all happening, I just have to go back to what I know to be true and then go forward with that. In this work and working in the weekly meetings, with clients, and because we're speaking of giving space, a number of times we show up and they're just spinning. They're just a Tasmanian devil coming in. And we sit down and it just keeps spewing and spewing and spewing. And sometimes I don't say anything for an hour and they look up at me and she'll say, I get it. And so just simply the number one tool is space, giving space. And then stating, all right, what do we know to be true? Not just perceived, but what do we know to be true? And what can we do? What are we responsible for in this place? And that's one of the things that listening to your podcasts, realizing, and I've thought a lot about this in talking today and having a son, 35, and in active alcohol addiction.
Yeah.
And wanting my words to be respectful, because this goes out there and you can't take it back. So knowing that he is deeply loved, just like Sam, and wanting, it's a super hard and courageous prayer to pray whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But always walking in hope and expectation for victory in that, but always giving space and showing up as love.
Well, and I'm imagining for you, as it has been for me, is, that's a journey that's evolving and has evolved over time, is, to be able to sit in the circle with women that are spinning out of control and to be the calm in the storm. Because, we have these things called mirror neurons in our brains, and we tend to mirror what's happening in front of us. But when we're conscious and aware of that, we can choose intentionality in who we are in those moments. However, it still takes work and a practice to get to that point where it then becomes so.
Yes. And this is what I so try and communicate to our volunteers and connection advocates. We are not responsible for their behaviors. We are showing up with peer support to help, go forward. And we do our best, but we are not responsible. And that was one of the things that I so took away from another of your podcasts, was releasing myself as a mama from my son's addiction. That was super helpful.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad to know that. When I, was able to be in that space to step back from it and to understand that I don't begin to know what Sam's purpose while he's alive here, but I know he has a purpose or he wouldn't be here. And even if he passed, he still will have left a purpose that is alive and has a heartbeat. And so that in some weird way kind of gave me some peace to, I guess, just kind of let go of the notion that I had any control over any of this, and that what was going to be was going to be, and then be very choice about who I was going to be in all of this too.
Yes, not lose yourself, be your strong, healthy, available self. And that, you speak that over and over and over in the podcast. And that is exactly where we need to be in taking care of ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that I wish I had this community, when I was, 40 years ago going through it. And so I'm grateful for it now. And one of the things that I want to communicate to this community and to, everybody dealing with loved ones, please don't give up hope. Please support the post-recovery programs in your area. Search them out. Please support them, because when relationships with family and friends are severed because of addiction, it's people, it's organizations like New Each Morning that are coming alongside your loved ones to help reconcile, to help them and to walk in a healthy, thriving place, so that relationships can be reconciled, because there's so much trust, there's so much hurt, over and over. And that chipping away, like I experienced, is what loved ones are experiencing. So the post-recovery support is so key and critical to stop that recidivism rate, which is rampant. In Oregon, there's hundreds of millions of dollars poured into the front end, which is necessary, but into the back end, it's like we're like a unicorn. I mean, programs are starting to realize the importance of it, because there's so much, investment of all kinds being wasted, with the recidivism rate, ramping over 60%.
Absolutely. It's a lifelong practice. And it really is about community building in a completely different way than what the community was that you were, in addiction in. And that's not an easy leap for anybody, period. So yeah, there's just so much to this. I mean, generally speaking, energy goes where the money goes. And we are so broken as a system in terms of helping people really get on track and create healthy lives. It tends, like you said, this is true all over the country, as it goes to the front end. And wow. So, and then much less. I mean, there are very few programs, and they're the high-end programs that have family programs, which is why Voices Encourage got started, was because I had to cobble together the things that I knew I needed in order to be able to elevate out of the desperation and the heartbreak, to understand the disease, understand who I was in this, who I wanted to be in this, and then reconfigure how I was going to stand and be in all of those things. And so that's why, we're being called to this work.
Yes. And you use such a great word there. We have to be intentional. We have to ask, who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as to this loved one? It might not be right now, but you can prepare just like they are preparing in the recovery. We need to prepare.
Yeah, I think people got a little confused. You can still love someone while they're in full-blown addiction. If you can see beyond their behavior to the spirit in which resides within that body, that's one thing. The other thing is understand the nature of the disease, because the addiction has taken the first position in survival brain. They're going to do all kinds of stuff that behaviorally you're like, it seems crazy to you. But they're doing it because their brain's telling them, in order to survive, you have to get the next hit. You have to get the next whatever it is. And they haven't disconnected from that lie that's going on in their head. And so, Sam would lie or ask for money or do all these kinds of things. And I'd go, well, okay, well, that's just the disease. That's not my son.
Yes, exactly. And we, as loved ones, we get in that survival mode. That wheel spins just the same for us, with different parts of the equation. And so, getting off that wheel
Mm-hmm.
as a loved one in
Mm-hmm.
survival mode
Right.
because of our loved ones' addictions. So it's just so important. And this Voices in Courage is a tool that I can now share with our clients to
Mm-hmm.
share with their families.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
It's beautiful.
Well, I mean, we're doing the same work, just little different audiences.
But it's all part. It's,
Mhm.
it's that collaboration.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I am seeing really transition and transform in our community is the collaboration.
Awesome.
Our community care provider here has started holding SUD forums, and it's bringing in all of the people that we all need to connect with. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
like there's 60 people, representing all the different parts that work together, which is, building that foundation that is so critical for
Right.
success.
Right. Right. Wow, that's awesome. Because it does take a village.
Yes.
There's no getting around that. I mean, community is important and always has been. And we, for multiple reasons, have gotten more isolated. I mean, we're probably the most isolated we've ever been as a culture at this point, and finding our way back to each other. I mean, this might sound weird, but I think it's one of the gifts out of this disease is the importance of community.
Yes, totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
And awareness with eyes to see,
Mm-hmm.
and permission. It's bringing permission to say it's not okay, but I can be okay, and I can learn and I can help, and it's great.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because my belief is, and the people that I follow, Dr. Gabor Mate and others, is that, addiction is trauma related. And so kind of how are you approaching that piece of it? Because yeah, there's so many reasons, there's so many questions that go with that, but how are you approaching the trauma piece that actually leads to the behavior?
I personally address it in realizing that the greater the addiction, the greater the mess, for lack of a better word, the greater the trauma, the greater the hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing that, and that's where we at New Age Morning, we are certified with the state as peer support specialists.
That's great.
And we hold the fundamentals of peer support training, or a training center. We are not clinically licensed, but that's where we connect with community partners, and make sure that our clients are connected with therapists. And there's so much more opening up right now dealing with trauma and recognizing that trauma is a root. It's the root, and the addictions are, the salve of trying to deal with those roots.
Right.
And so trauma is the root of it.
Well, I don't know. The way that I think about culture in America certainly is that we have not been trained in terms of how to deal with our pain. And so therefore, we try to stuff it, and we try to medicate it, and we try to keep it at bay as long as we possibly can, to the point where it could kill us, because we're so terrified of actually feeling that level of pain, which you have to feel it to release it. And that's true for, family members. There have been certainly moments along the way where I just was dropped to my knees in terms of grief. And I was determined to be with the grief and not stuff the grief.
Yes. And sit with it, acknowledge it, sit with it, process it, and go forward, so that it isn't against you, but rather you're using it to go forward. And I had someone say to me, my mom passed unexpectedly. It was the very first funeral I ever went to. I mean, we were all in trauma. It was 2 months before my first wedding. And it was a very traumatic experience. And I remember one time being in this group and just saying, I got to get over this. I got to get on. I got to get over it. And he looked at me right in the face and he said, Cathie, you need to go through it. you're just going to always continue to deal with it. And of course, it's a giant gap, in my life, even, I don't know, 45 years now. But it takes great courage to sit with grief. It takes great courage. And I will share, people coming out of addiction. And again, just that raw awareness and reality of feelings. It's, having someone there, having a community around them to deal with that. And I'm so grateful that grief and trauma are now there. There's a whole shift.
Yes.
Instead of stuffing and get over it, pull your bootstraps up, which, it takes grit to do life. You got to have grit, grit and grace.
I actually have a pendant that I wear that says grit, grace, and gratitude.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, because I believe all that. And I believe that whatever shows up in our lives is meant to serve and teach us, to help us evolve. And yeah, so I mean, this is just a really deep, rich conversation about life. And when things come up, it's like that's the divine time that has been delivered to process and to turn around and to go through and to change. It's like we're being trusted with it at that time. Yeah, that's great. I also think of grief as I couldn't feel the grief that I felt at the depth that I felt it if I didn't love that much more. Yes. So I think, if we're willing to love with the notion that we will get hurt, and that's okay. I'd much rather feel the love and the depth of that and then the grief than not have those full expressions in my life. Right. And it's also that freedom to give ourselves permission to love, knowing there's going to be hurt and grief involved. But again, going back to creating those tools, creating the plan for when that happens, being intentional. And I don't know if you've ever seen that, it goes across Facebook every now and then, but there's two sides and there's a ladder across and there's people holding up the ladder. And sometimes we're the ones walking across the ladder. And sometimes we're the ones holding up the ladder, and we're all in it and have different parts at different times. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a really great way to think about this, is because just because we've done the work that we've done and we're doing the work that we're doing now, it doesn't absolve us from, our own moments of what I would call relapse. It's not that I don't have thoughts going through my head every once in a while, like I get a hit and I think something's happened to Sam. Yes. And it's not true. It's almost a little PTSD to having the experience for so long and of holding the space. And so that's another kind of up-level skill set to take a hold of is, I just took myself for a walk. Like I had one yesterday. So I walked for like 45 minutes and went right into gratitude and did basically a gratitude walk for 45 minutes to get myself out of that habit of thought and panic and knowing full well that that wasn't what was going on. It was a habit from before and I still needed to deal with it. Yep, exactly. That's so great. I think you should market those. I think you should create a marketing with that, your 3 words, grit, grace, and gratitude. Yeah, it's really, I gave it to a friend of mine because I just think those 3 words are super powerful. They're foundational. Yeah. And if you go back to those in every scenario. And I do. So I have 3 words that I live by. I start my day with as a way of intentionally being. And they change about every 10 years, but it's more a reflection of kind of the next evolution of where I am in my life, which, I'm a big intention person. I'm a big, what's the outcome that you want to create person? How are you going to go about creating that? And it takes work to do that. Yes. And so the space that we live in relative to addiction and recovery and all of that is a very intentional space. Yes, and has to be. And it's life-giving. And I so love that this community is
transitioning out of labeling those in addiction rather than substance use disorder. Because I just feel like every time we speak, oh, they're just an addict. Every time someone says, oh, they're just an addict, like that is labeling. And that is not, that's where having eyes to see and know they're in there.
Yeah.
They're in there.
Well, what I find is that way of approaching this is a way of they are less than and I am better than, and complete ignorance about what's going on with this disease. And they might not have any idea who's really close to them because, you look to the right, you look to the left, somebody's dealing with this disease. So it's an easy way to kind of go, not my job, man, not my problem, but we're seeing more and more of this, the ramifications and the impact of addiction. It's not going away. It's getting bigger because we're not getting the lessons.
And you think about things like this platform of the podcast and just all of us in it being very intentional with our words. I mean, words speak life or death. So if we change our vocabulary, it could be just one time that it plants a seed. Every time we do it, it plants seeds for others to realize that it's about people and a substance use disorder.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You and I have lived this generationally.
Yes.
My mom was addicted to prescription medications. My brother was a cocaine addict. And I married, PTSD, alcoholic Vietnam vet, and, Sam, and blah, blah, blah. So, and I bless all those relationships because they were the stepping stones to who I am today and the work that I'm doing today. It took me years to understand I was gathering puzzle pieces.
But you chose that. You were intentional and you chose to use them each as a building block and continue to, and not take the victim mentality. So kudos to you, because that choice and intentionality is now going out.
Yes.
It's now being.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer that when life feels like it's falling apart, it's actually falling together. There is a gift in everything that happens to us, no matter how horrific.
Yes, but we have to be intentional to look for it.
Yes.
And sometimes that's the community coming around us and saying, okay, let's look at all the pieces.
Yeah.
Because we're not meant to do it on our own.
No, never, never. And I do think that community is one of the gifts that's coming out of this whole thing. So we are getting up against the edge of time here. I want to be respectful of your time. So is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't, or some words of wisdom that are consistent in your mind and in your practice that you want to share with the community before we call it a day?
I guess I would just repeat, don't give up. It's not your responsibility, and get in a community that helps you, which in turn helps those that you love.
Great. Exclamation point on that. So I just want to say how deeply grateful I am that our paths crossed a few months ago, I guess September. And you were one of the people in that group that I was like, okay, I got to get to know this one. And I didn't really know why. And then as we shared, I was like, oh, of course. Yeah. So, and this has been months in the making to get to this point because we're both super busy and we live big lives. But I just can't thank you enough for the gift of who you are and the work that you're doing and the lives that you're changing. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And it's great to have partnerships and collaboration. And it's great to know that we're not alone.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So everybody, have a great holiday. Take care of yourselves. Love with boundaries.